This is NAIDOC Week, the National Aborigines and Islanders Day Observance Committee Week. A mouthful, but that's why you are seeing gesture politics like Woke Channel 10 giving weather reports with Aboriginal names for the cities built by the hated colonialists. They'll make everyone feel more at home. Now, if this week instead focused on doing stuff that really matters, at least to me, like getting more Aboriginal children to go to school, getting more Aboriginal men into meaningful work, I would be totally on board. But unfortunately, there's another thing stopping me. It's things like this tweet today from the co-founder of the racist group Warriors of the Aboriginal Resistance, a woman who identifies as Aboriginal and says NAIDOC is actually for us. She means just for Aborigines. Reconciliation Week, she says, for you, and don't mix the two. Wow, okay, you're told. So if you thought all Aboriginal activists truly believed in reconciling and not dividing, think again, because that is just a polite lie. Speaking of, we now have institutions that are supposed to be in the truth business. Taxpayer-funded ones, universities, ABC, SBS, news organisations, truth business, supposedly. But in fact, there are two big areas now where you cannot trust any of them to tell the truth. One, of course, is global warming. I'll give some examples later. The other is race politics. Now, these are areas where what these organisations call the truth actually includes what appears to be obvious untruths that are meant to make us feel better. Does anyone really believe them, or do they just think it would be nice if these untruths were true, like this claim told without challenge on the ABC by a leading Aboriginal educator?
The boomerang actually led to the invention of propellers, which then led to flight, which then led to, the invention of drones, which now patrol our coastlines and save us from sharks.
But let me tell you how determined these institutions I mentioned, universities, in this case Melbourne University, the ABC and SBS, how determined they are to believe the untrue for the same sort of feel-good reasons. I've shown you why in many shows now I consider it to be beyond doubt that so-called Aboriginal historian Bruce Pascoe, well, is not Aboriginal at all. And his bestseller book, Dark Emu, is a hoax. Pascoe simply made up evidence for his claim that Aborigines used to actually be farmers living in houses in towns of 1,000 people with pens for animals. In fact, even Melbourne University Press has now finally published a book by two left-wing academics, can't criticise them now, saying what I have said for 2 years. Pascoe's book is riddled with weak evidence and claims that he's simply made up. Now, all this is beyond dispute. It's so obvious, it's just astonishing this scam ran for years. But now look, the ABC, which for years promoted Pascoe to schools even, now says it is still pushing ahead with a 2-part TV series starring Pascoe and his fake theories. SBS is marking NAIDOC Week by asking Bruce Pascoe, believe it or not, for his favourite Aboriginal-inspired recipe for cooking fish and calling this white hoaxer Uncle Bruce Pascoe, an Aboriginal Australian writer and teacher. But worst of all is Melbourne University, which still has Pascoe as its Professor of Indigenous Agriculture, a fake discipline inspired by his fake claims that Aborigines used to be farmers and not hunter-gatherers. You, taxpayers, pay for all these institutions to tell the truth. The ABC, SBS and Melbourne University. But as I have shown, in some areas at least, they tell obvious untruths and tell them shamelessly. Why do you pay them?